Thank you, Mrs. DeGraw. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. I will lead us in the pledge.
We're on that side today.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. The floor will be open for a motion to approve our agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda.
There it is. Welcome, Mr. Schmidt. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay.
Screen share.
Public comment. I have one. As a reminder, these are not to exceed 3 minutes. Discussion of personnel matters and personal attacks are not appropriate. Oh, Mrs. Burtonshaw.
Do you want to, you can come and just join us at the table. Yeah, it'd be easier.
Okay. Well, I sent you all a letter, and I did have a discussion with Mr. Williams about graduation requirements, and I'm very visual, so I brought you some things to maybe help you visualize. Okay, so when Dylan, he will be a senior this year, when he started, this was his graduation requirement sheet. Okay, so I only brought a couple of those if you want to look at them. So by keeping 6 elective or 6 period days, this is what the graduation requirements has turned to. So the reason I just wanted to bring this in is I've been doing schedules for 8 years, 4 as a parent, and then 5 as a parent and 3 as my job. And by the time we get to their senior year, it is really hard to find enough electives. So this year, as Dylan was going through he has 10 electives. And to find something that he has not taken is really, really hard. And so what I wanted to do, first off, Mr. Williams has some great ideas about this that I know he's going to present in the discussion. My boys have done IDLA to help with the elective issue. IDLA is not for everybody. We know that not everybody does well on a computer as a class. We learned that this year. And also dual credit. I'm really excited about the dual credit opportunities, but those are not for everyone either. If you take dual credit and you do badly, it goes on your college transcript. So some kids can actually end up on probation before they even enter college, and it has happened. So what I was going to ask you to do is to get a schedule from Mr. Williams and go home and do a 4-year plan. That's what we usually do, is do a 4-year plan with the kids. So do a 4-year plan and see how hard it is to fill the electives. See how hard, and have your husband do it. Then you'd get your view and his. You take my ag boys, that's their pathway, and if they were to have to do fashion design, that's not going to be fun for anybody. The teacher, the rest of the class that wants to be there, so I wanted you to really visualize and see. I just know how hard it is, especially their senior year, to try to fill electives. And by doing, we're up to, if you do not take seminary, 72 credits. That's a lot. When 46 is the state required, that's a lot. And so some of our freshmen and sophomore will graduate with 74 credits because they'll have those 2 intervention. I know you got rid of that this year, but I just wanted you to have a visual, and then I'd love it if you take a schedule and just try to do it out.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Burtonshaw.
And Madam Chair, may I make a comment? Thank you, Jimmy, for bringing that. as Mr. Guimar comes, he'll be coming later on in the discussion part. These things are all going to be taken into consideration. So this feedback from Mrs. Burtonshaw will be important for us. And some of the things that Mrs. Burtonshaw shared with me earlier, I've already shared with Mr. Guimar as well, that he's going to put into this. And so this is a good process to have feedback from parents to be able to move into that. So thank you.
Okay. Well, first off, this will be the second reading of our Policy 3000 series. The floor will be open for a motion to approve that second reading with the grammatical errors or corrections that Mrs. DeGraw will receive.
Madam Chair, I make the motion that we approve the 3000 series with some minor corrections.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay.
Right.
Mr. Williams, can you talk to us about re-entering teacher negotiations?
Yes. So on our action item sheet here that I have for the board to see, and those that are at home, let me just go ahead and make that a little bit larger for.
Actually, I got my glasses.
You got that? So due to recent legislative action and also the State Department unfreezing lanes on the state salary schedule, the contracts that we have for this school year don't reflect last year. So this is the best way to explain this is that we need to reopen negotiations for this year's contract. The legislators, if we jump back to last February of 2020, the legislature went through, they approved a budget and spending allocations for teachers' salaries. That was passed in early March and went into law. March 15th-ish, COVID hit, and we went to remote learning. A month later, the governor came out and said, we are cutting your current budget by 1%, which caused all sorts of turmoil. And then the governor came out in June, right when we were doing budgets. So at that time, we were supposed to put together a plan for our entire budgets, put into the contract the lanes and changes of every teacher. But the governor came out and said, I'm going to propose that we freeze the lanes and pay increases for teachers. And so in June, I shared with the board the letter from the governor that had his recommendations. We did our contracts with our teachers frozen in where they're at.
The board voted to freeze salaries according to the governor's recommendation.
For this year.
For this year, for this 2021. January of 21, the legislative session came in and there was disagreements between lawmakers and the governor about who has the authority to really, whether or not the governor had the authority to freeze that or not. And so as a school district, we're trying to do the best we can. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't see where all of these different things will come out. So when the lawmakers got back in session in January, they came in and groups said the governor didn't have the authority to change Idaho code because the salary apportionment and everything was put into Idaho code. So legislation didn't move. They didn't act on it at all. So when February 15th rolled around, the State Department of Education, again, we have governor, legislatures, State Department, and also state board. We have 4 different groups that are kind of making it, and that's why it's been such a task to do all of this and figure out exactly where it's going. So the State Department, who has the task of sending all the money out, they're going, what do we base this off of? And the only thing they can base off sending out the money is through Idaho code. And so then we were told the lanes were never frozen. And it makes us feel like, wait a minute. So, but you said they were. And so, but that, when I say, instead of as a district feeling like, okay, they weren't frozen, but you told us they were, that's those groups, I think, making jabs at each other. Just saying it never was frozen, but it makes us feel like a district like, oh, it's never frozen, so I guess we did it wrong. Like, how are we supposed to know? I have documents from the governor on our board saying they're frozen. So what that means then, and this is a good thing for teachers. This is a good thing that the salary portion that we have wasn't changed. And so we need to re-enter negotiations so that the money that we receive from the state is reflected. Now, right now, we don't have the details because we just need to vote to, as a district, to reopen that negotiation. Then I can go to the Teachers Association president, Mr. Hall, and say, our board is willing to reopen negotiations so we can basically come to an agreement on where the teachers, yeah.
To correct the situation.
When we gave them that, it wasn't called a bonus.
The COVID.
COVID supplemental pay.
COVID money. Did that make up for what they lost?
For some it did, and for some it didn't. And so we could, as we negotiate, talk to the teachers about something like that. But again, the purpose of this is to not go over the details of the negotiation, but that was not intended to backfill the contract in a way. But
was
did it
just
help?
additional.
Yeah, it helped.
Okay. So we don't even consider that when we're talking.
I don't think we do.
Okay.
I don't think we do, but if any employee in the district, because if we recall on those, we actually paid our hourly employees, even though it was a less amount, the percentage was way higher, very generous that the board did, that any money that anybody would have lost could have been made up through that. But right now, the proposal is just to have a motion to re-enter. I would recommend that we do re-enter it so we can get that figured out. And
This is more for just making things.
yes,
Back to where they were
yes,
normal.
we are end of April 2021, and we're going to go back and try to fix
from the very
something
beginning.
that should have been done
Yeah.
last fall.
So there will be some people that will have a change.
Yes, we will have some employees that will benefit from that, because it's not just the laws of the apportionment that they sent, but it's also, there's the advanced professional endorsement rung that is going to change a lot of the different things and elements that even as of yesterday, we were working with the State Department to finalize teachers to make sure that they were getting the allocation that they should have had. So any other questions?
So we open for a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we re-enter the teacher negotiations for this current 2021 school year.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. And now teacher negotiations for next year.
So while we're at it, we'll need to have a vote. Idaho code, and you can see in here that the school boards are empowered and shall, upon our own initiative, reach out to the local education, or they can reach out to us to have that. So again, the negotiations that we enter in with the teachers as per Idaho code can be for are required to be compensations and benefits. Anything above and beyond that, we do have some things in our master agreement that are beyond that. So the proposal that I would have is that we vote to enter into negotiations for salaries, benefits, and the master agreement.
We'll be open for that motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we enter into teacher negotiations for the 21-22 school year with educators of West Jefferson 253 to negotiate their salaries and benefits in the master agreement.
I'm sorry. You're fine. Is there any discussion on that?
Well, so we don't even know yet.
So that's a good question. There's 2 or 3 different parts of the budget that come into the district. The salary apportionment part, that's the part that's in Idaho code. That's the part that's solid. The part that is getting discussed right now that we don't know is what they call the discretionary or the entitlement money. So those are 2 different pots. In the overall budget with the district, we have that creates the overall number. But we know the salary part is firm. It's the entitlement or the discretionary that is not. That's the part where they're still trying to decide, are we going to take 4,000 away from the part that was already subtracted from last year and force the state or force the LEAs or the districts to backfill with COVID money. And so that's the part that's still unknown. And so I guess that's good and bad news. It's on one part, the salary and benefits portion is covered, but we do use some of that entitlement money or that discretionary money to help cover benefits. And so it's not.
And do we know anything about what benefits look like next year?
For insurance, has
The-
that been?
Yeah, the insurance will probably go up.
Well, if you remember, we voted to, and our teacher association was very helpful with this
Right.
and allowing us to be able to change insurance groups.
Right.
We are going to have a level, we're not going to have an increase next year.
That's
Oh,
wonderful.
good.
Wonderful.
And so the others
At
were
least on our
increasing.
medical. We haven't heard about the other ones.
Yeah.
Is dental covered then also, or?
We give them dental, yes.
Okay.
Super. Okay. Any other questions? Do we have a date? Or do we have
So
a-
what we'll do is now that we've formally voted, we did vote.
Not
on that,
yet.
right? If the board chooses to pass that, I'll reach out to Mr. Hall and we will set up a time to do that. We will have, as a board, we don't have the entire board, but there will be 2 members that can be selected to help sit on the negotiation team
Super.
to do that. And then we'll just set up the times to figure out the details. So
Now, we will
I
do the
think we
renegotiation
did
first.
last year.
Once that's resolved, then we'll go into our
Yeah.
new negotiation.
But looks like we'll have to wait till we know more.
yeah, that's why we'll start with the renegotiation first, because that's the part that
Needs to be.
needs to be addressed first. So this vote will allow us to open up into it, but it will probably not be finalized until the end of the year.
Now, the JPEG did pass a budget last night that is now at the House today for K through 12. So we possibly could know by the end of the day what our budget is for next year.
Yeah, they're really late.
Yeah, we'll know next year's budget before we really know this year's budget
Isn't that
completely.
Oh, okay. Well, it's been moved and seconded to enter into teacher negotiations for the 21-22 school year. Those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Do you want to go in order here?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I see Mrs. Bell
Yeah.
out there.
So we've invited Mrs. Bell to come, and Ms. Bell, you can come sit at the table. She just give a highlight about the secondary math program and what's been going on. We've had this math curriculum for several years now, and we've had people ask, how is it going? And so I've asked Mrs. Bell to come in and share her feedback on the program. And this is the first year that our junior high is on the same program. And so I will just say, first off, Mrs. Bell, thank you for coming. And we'll let Mrs. Bell, I'm going to pull up what she shared with me. These were some bullet points from her speaking points on with this math program. So Mrs. Bell, I'll just give you the floor. Thank you.
It's called College Preparatory Math, or CPM is what we're using. And what I just handed you was just a description of it. I was just going to highlight a few things, and then if you wanted to read more, you're welcome to. But the research says that students should engage in problem-based lessons structured around a core idea. And so it should be more problem-based instead of a teacher just lecturing and explaining how to do it. They should be more actively engaged in the lesson. And they should interact in groups to foster math discourse, talking to each other and trying to figure things out. With the teacher, of course, they're helping, because otherwise who knows where they would end up. And then they should practice their homework practice. It should be spaced out over time so that they don't forget about it. They're not just doing one thing and then 3 months later we go back to it. They need to just have a little bit all the time and keep learning it. And so that's really the basis of what this curriculum is about. The differences from what we had before was this is coherent. It all intertwines together. To jump around is a little bit hard because they expect you to know something and then they're building on it and they're constantly going back and building on the other stuff instead of going from one thing to something else and then back. It's all very intertwined and connected together. It helps with all students, not just the really top level students or the lower level students. They can meet it at whatever level they're at because they're working together and they all can help each other, and different students shine at different things. And so they all just work together. They have their roles and their teams that we set them up in to specifically do things, and then we switch the roles around so they get different chances to do different things. They learn a lot of different ways. They learn by trying, they learn by me explaining something, they learn by drawing pictures, they learn with manipulatives. There's all kinds of different ways that we're trying to help them to understand what's going on, not just get the right answer. Our focus has very much changed from just getting the answer to understanding what we're doing. So that way they can make the connection and apply it to something else. And the teachers, it is very flexible curriculum. The teachers it gives you a way you could structure it. So if I think they're gonna struggle, I can just walk them through it step by step and kind of let them do it, but as more walkthrough. Or I could just write a problem on the board and say, okay, let's figure this out. There you go. And I've done both. And it just kind of depends on where I feel like they're at. So it's really flexible, and I could do the same lesson either way with the same lesson. It's just set up that way. Students do learn more when they discuss their thinking with others. It helps them bring up their knowledge level. If I understood it, explain it to someone else helps me understand it better. It helps that other person understand it. And if they ask me questions or they have a comment to make, then suddenly I'm thinking about it in a different way. And so that discourse is really important in bringing up their knowledge level for everyone in the room. And they're more confident in a small group, and then we go to a whole group. So having them in the small groups really makes that talking work better. When they do talk about it, they retain it better. I'm almost embarrassed to say that I've taught here for quite some time, and some topics I have taught and retaught and retaught. One topic in particular in Algebra 2, I would teach 5 times, and they had supposedly learned it in Algebra 1. I would re-explain it 5 times during the year in Algebra 2, because every time we went back to it, they just didn't remember what we were doing. I would re-explain it again in college algebra, and I would re-explain it again in calculus. It was crazy. They just could not remember it. But the way we're doing it now, and the manipulatives and them just really understanding what's going on has completely changed that. And now it's completing the square. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or not, but they actually, there's 4 different ways probably that they could solve a problem, and that's one of them. And that's the method that a lot of them go to now instead of choosing something else. So they're really starting to understand what we're doing better. We just have to fill in and be patient, because filling in a lot of those holes that they've had that they should already know how to do, but it's okay. We're just taking them from where they're at and moving forward. The book does contain fewer homework problems. You usually have about 8 homework problems that we give them, but they aren't solve this equation. It's very much not a find an answer kind of a curriculum. It's understand it, apply what you learned here to this. They give them little previews of what's coming based on something that they've learned before. So there's a couple problems of what we talked about that day. And then there's some review problems. And then there might be some preview problems, that something that they should be able to apply to. And we're going to talk about it tomorrow or the next day. And they just want to get them to start thinking. So their homework is not as many problems, but they're a lot deeper problems, a lot more application type. And that masked and spaced is what they call it, a little bit for over a long period of time. They remember things a lot better. And so we're hoping that memory thing is something that was a big deal for me. Things that I've noticed that students are changing their attitude about math. They don't just, oh, I can't do this and I won't try. They are trying. I've even got some that'll come to the board now. I mean, that was really putting themselves out there and just trying something, and they're starting to get better at that. And so we're working with that a lot. They talk a lot more between each other. My class is a lot noisier, but as long as they're talking about math, it's okay. But that's what, I mean, they're not just sitting there watching me tell me what to do. That's not learning. That's just getting an answer. And so this is much, much more engagement from the kids. Just yesterday, I put 2 problems on the board, and we've been talking about different ways to factor and solve different things and what it meant. And this was the last day of the chapter, and I just put 2 problems on the board. I said, okay, find how to factor it. And I didn't give them anything else. And they actually carried it past that and found the solutions. And then they're also, and so then we did it on the board, and I wrote them down, and I said, now look, there's a pattern between these. This is called this, and this is called that. And I said, but I don't expect you to memorize the pattern, because you'd walk out of this room and you would forget it within 5 minutes, even if you remembered it by the time you walked out of the room. I said, but you can solve these by the stuff that we've learned. And so you don't need to memorize. You don't need to memorize formulas. And that's where I'm trying to get them to, is that they don't need to have all these things memorized, because it's just too much to memorize and mess up. But if they can figure it out, that's what we want. And they are doing that. Probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, I can't remember how long ago it was, Veronica Blackham, with the regional math specialist, was in my room. We were doing a lesson. She was kind of just watching, taking notes and stuff. And she was really impressed with the connections that they were making. She just said, I couldn't believe that they went from here to here in one lesson. She thought I was crazy, saying, well, this is what I'm going to do and where we're going to be. And she couldn't believe that they were actually doing that. But it's because we're reviewing all the time, even though they don't know that we're reviewing. I mean, that's what their homework is. It's always on their mind. And then they can just apply it to something new. We were learning how to move trig equations around in Algebra 2. And she could not believe, because that really wasn't even in Algebra 2 curriculum before. And she couldn't believe that they were able to do it really quickly and easily. And they knew the stuff that was going on. And so we are seeing differences. Like I said, there are still holes. We're filling them in. We're working on it, but I can see huge differences. And a big one is just an attitude change that brings up their potential. So anyway, that's mostly what I had prepared. If there were any questions or anything.
Right. I, where you have little small groups help each other. That never happened when I was in school. You had to just do it on your own, and sometimes you need a little help.
And they are getting really good. There's still a few students who like to work by themselves and they don't want to, but I've got other students who are actually making it their goal to get them to talk. And so when they're in the group, I'm still working on her. That's great. Keep trying. But I have their desks set in groups, and we try to do that throughout all. It's been helpful that we're all trying to do the same type of instruction, because it really is different than what their kids are used to. But we've got their desks in groups, and we move their groups around every once in a while, and it's worked really well.
Was it 2 years ago when you started?
Yeah, when the high school did, yes.
2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Are you seeing, pardon my voice, I'm sorry. What are the grades like? Are you seeing grades go up?
Not a ton. It's probably about the same as it was before. We're implementing different things, like if we're going to grade their homework or not, and if those kinds of things that we're still working through. And so
A's, B's, C's,
Yes.
D's, and E's.
Yes, we still definitely do. And a lot of it is the students, if they, that's okay, I know what you meant. But if the students aren't doing their practice, their homework, they're on the bottom end. And right now, we're trying to get them to change their thinking that it shouldn't be graded because it's learning and we're doing it together. And so why should I give you a grade for that? But if they're not going to do it, then they're not going to learn it. And so that's mostly our bottom are the kids that are not doing it, and we're trying to figure out how to motivate them. We're still working through that a little bit, but that's where they are.
I was hoping to hear.
I know, I realize that. I do see a lot of connections and things making, but I there still is that span.
Do you think it's gonna take time, that it will get better with time, or?
I'm certain that it will get better with time because we're starting it and they're going to be doing it for more than just my class. I mean, and
But
just the high school.
A junior high opted not to go this way, and.
They are
we've
doing
seen
it this year.
They are starting to do it.
Yeah,
this
they
year.
are doing it this year.
I didn't hear about that change.
Starting in 7th grade or 8th grade?
7th grade. 7th grade is using this curriculum this year.
So maybe that will help as
Yeah,
time goes on.
It definitely will. I'm sure of it because it's teaching it a whole different way, and so they're understanding the concepts. And I don't think that they're learning as much as they realize. I mean, they are learning more than they realize they're learning because they're doing it.
And I was reading through this, I have some other questions.
Can I make a comment while you're looking for that,
yes.
just along those lines? I appreciate Mrs. Bell with that comment about this, the focus on learning and not just grades. Because if we're looking at the traditional sense, and I've shared this before with the board, I was pretty good at getting a grade. I could go and I could memorize to my short-term memory the things I needed to have for the test. As soon as the test was done, you can't,
Delete.
I go back into a class like that. I'm going, did I really take this in college and in high school? Because I can't remember any of it. But the process that we're working through though is how do we reflect the student learning in a grading sense? Because on one hand, somebody's going to hear that and say, oh, grades haven't gone up, so this isn't a great program. But it's not about
I hope I didn't.
grades.
mean that.
And I know you didn't mean it that way, but if somebody's listening to the meeting, would go in that and say, oh, well, Mrs. Bell says the grades aren't going up, but this isn't about grades going up, because grades can be impacted by non-learning things, and we
Maybe
want
not
to.
grades, but standard tests.
Yeah, I can see in the future them going up as the kids get used to this. But this is the first year actually that we haven't graded the homework. And so they're still saying, well, if it's not going to affect my grade,
Why
I'm
should I
not
do it?
going to do it. And so that practice is not happening on many kids. Yeah, and so we're not quite there yet, but that will reflect in their grades.
But as a school, I've been informed that we're reflecting on that to try to find a way. Is there a balance that we somehow put a little bit of a grade in there to push the kids along? Because it's about finding a balance. You can't have the pendulum go so far one way where it's completely, we trust you all to come out and learn. The kids aren't going to do that, but you also can't go completely to the other side where the traditional one is do 50 of these problems in class and then take 20 more at home and do it. And then I can pat myself on the back and say, I taught you.
That's how I learned.
And that's how they would do that. But
Yeah,
we weren't, this process is pushing it to long-term memory.
I do see a difference and I like it. But I was worried that junior high wasn't involved.
Oh,
I'm glad to hear
they-
that they are.
Yeah, they are. We are looking, as a math department, we're looking at self-reflecting and self-grading students with their homework, and we're hoping that will help motivate them more, but that's just looking.
Are you going down to kindergarten also?
We
I know
are
this program doesn't go,
So-
it's only 7-12.
it goes 6-12,
6-12.
yeah, and we don't have it in our 6th grade right now.
But I've always thought that there was a stop here, that we weren't progressing like we should in kindergarten. So I'm not kindergarten in the younger grades.
I have not looked. I know that there are some schools that are really successful with this curriculum. And I haven't talked to them specifically about what they use for their younger grades, because this one only starts at 6th grade, but I'm sure there's some that fit really well into it. And we did a PD, I don't know, a month or so ago with down to the 4th grade, I think. And they are teaching a lot of the same methods, that concepts, the way of doing it that we are doing, and it kind of follows through. So I'm not saying that what they're doing is not fitting in well with what we're doing, but I just have not looked at what they're doing yet.
So if I'm college bound and I'm a freshman and I take algebra the first year with this program, right?
Well, you could, or you could be in geometry, either one.
Where did I take algebra?
In the 8th grade, it's very mixed in. There's a little bit of a disconnect there with our 8th graders. Right now, we're just doing 7th grade math, 8th grade math, and then we give them a test and they could possibly go into algebra or geometry when they get into the high school. There is a curriculum that we can put the kids into in the 8th grade while it goes 7th and 8th grade that is a little more accelerated. I don't know if we want to track them though, and so we're kind of holding back and just kind of watching to see how they're doing with it. So we're kind of in a little bit of, I don't know if they want to track, you know what I'm saying, put them into the fast track or the slower track. The research there, it says don't track them. And so I don't know, we kind of are just kind of seeing if we can do this without having them tracked.
Well, you talk about there are specific responsibilities for each position in the
Yes.
What page are you on? This is Perkins.
Page 3.
I just wanted to pull that up on.
Page 3, under teams work more effectively.
There you go. Okay.
Can you give me an example of how that works in a group of 4?
There's
Say you've got a slow person, what does he get to do?
Well, they manipulate around, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
There's one that makes sure that they have all their resources. I can't remember their exact names, but there's one that if they need pencils or scissors or rulers, whatever, they go and get that. I think it's the resource manager. There's someone that keeps them on task. There's someone that makes sure everybody understands what the question is. And then the other one, always the recorder, and they just write their stuff down. And so they're all working together, but they each have a specific role to play in figuring out the problem. And they switch roles.
And so the one that's slower can actually do.
Oh, yes,
same
this
thing
is set up for any
for
level.
success.
Yes, for any level.
So it's not set up so that one individual is doing all of the work.
No, they're all
They're all
working
just
together.
passing.
And part of what they,
like
I don't know, last week sometime, they had to figure out what we were doing, and I said, okay, now you're gonna make a poster, and when I come back, I'm gonna ask any one of you how to solve this, and you have to be able to tell me. And so they're responsible for everyone in their group to be able to answer what I'm asking. So they work together as a team, and that's really an important part of it.
That's good, because I remember when you introduced this program, I was worried that the top person would solve the problem for all of them, and they would all get an A, and the top person would have done all the work.
No, because this is very much not answer focused. It is
Okay.
concept and how they're doing it and what's going on. The answer is important, but it's not the most important thing.
Okay. Then go down to a mathematical text, write down. Okay. Every lesson has a similar structure. And they include introduction, problem, investigation, closure, math, notes, box, when appropriate, and homework. What does homework entail?
They call it review and preview in their book. And so the first couple of questions usually are about what we've talked about that day. And then the rest of them, and there's usually about 8-ish questions, and then the rest of them are either stuff that they've learned before
Okay. So that
or
is a review.
stuff that they've learned it before, but they want to bring it to their
Okay,
attention
so
because we're gonna talk about it pretty soon.
So today's work plus a review.
And then maybe a problem or two of what's
And
coming.
it could, of what's coming.
Well, stuff that they've learned before to remind them of that, like
Oh, okay.
my next chapter is statistics. We haven't been doing statistics, but the last 2 or 3 homework assignments has had a statistics problem that they should already know how to do, just to remind them of
Now, I
of
noticed
stuff, so
that
they're starting to think about it.
later on, they talk about a parent book. Does a parent help them, they're able to help them then?
There is a book. My students have not wanted it. I've showed it to them. I said, this is available. A few parents have asked for them and I've given them to them. But it follows along and it gives a little more detail, like what parents are used to from what the parents learned. And a few more examples, and then there's some homework problems in there, but more step-by-step examples. Our textbook doesn't have step-by-step examples of how to solve something.
Okay.
They're figuring it out and we're talking, and it's up to the teacher to make sure that we've all got it all
We're
figured out.
not hearing from parents, this is too hard, I can't help them.
There's a book, I don't know if the junior high gave it out. At the high school, I've got most of them in my closet. Most of the kids, I mean, a few parents have gotten them, but not very many. But that it has the examples of like step by step, and it's not every lesson that has it, but there's step by step, and then there's more practice in that. And we gave them all access to an ebook, which is just exactly their textbook online. But on the online version, there's the homework, and they can click on the homework problem and it will give them help. Eventually it will give them the answer, but it will show them steps or ask them questions of how to do that problem. So they can get the homework at home, the help at home if they need
My
that.
goodness, I didn't know you had the textbook online.
Yeah, we have the in class, I make them bring a book and we use the book, but they do have access. At the beginning of the year, we gave them all access to, so they could get that help if they needed it.
That's good, that's good.
And so if all of those elements aren't happening from the top to the bottom, obviously we have our department chair here. That's something that our department can work towards. You know, the other 2 teachers are new teachers to this curriculum. They're working hard. I've seen them doing some great professional development with Mrs. Bell. And, you know, it's hard to keep a math teacher. We're so fortunate to be able to have Mrs. Bell have been in our district for as long as she has. But there's always professional growth that our teachers are working towards, and they're open to that. I shared with that during my superintendent report last board meeting about the solution tree with Tim Knold.
Yes.
And they're working towards that. So there's a lot of different things that we can do, and maybe we can double check with Mrs. Burtonshaw about those.
Yeah,
those
I
resources.
know I set it up for her and gave her the stuff. I assume, well, actually I could just look on my computer and know if
Just
she
see.
assigned them to the kids or not.
And if not, it's
Yeah.
something that we can definitely look into to strengthen as we
Yeah.
move forward.
Is there a plan to take this to 6th grade?
It hasn't been discussed yet. We could look at this. That's something that, like we said, there's nothing set. If everything has a sequential focus and follow through, there's no reason why we couldn't explore that. But for the upcoming year, not yet. This is the first that it's like we took the step to get it into 7th and 8th grade, you know. But we could possibly look at that as well. But I agree with Mrs. Bell on the current one that we have in our elementary does follow a lot of these ideas.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's being done, that's something that I can visit with my administrators to make sure that they are getting into the classrooms at those younger levels and making that happen with some of the changes we have with our elementary leadership. I think that's going to allow the administrators to do and have more of a focus to provide that academic support to the teachers. And so definitely math's on our radar. Like we've mentioned that after the one board meeting, math is on our radar to make sure that we're moving in a great direction with our reading, amazing direction with our reading. We know that math is the next one, but as we eat the elephant, got to take a bite at a time. I think I've eaten a lot of the elephant in a year and a half to almost 2 years of being in this job. So just give me some time.
Because I have more questions.
Do you?
We need to move on to our graduation discussion because we are tight on time today.
We can wrap it up though, like, but ask your question with Mrs.
Like,
Bell.
what if somebody just doesn't get it in the assessment part, in assessment,
Um,
if somebody's
The
just not
way
getting
the
it?
assessments that we have structured at the high school is the first half of the chapter is gonna be on the chapter test, but the second half is gonna be on the next chapter test. So that they have time, because they practice over time, so they have time through the whole next chapter to learn that end of the chapter stuff. If they haven't gotten it, the same types of questions are repeated on several tests so that they just know it's important. And I've got one question, not that specific question, but one type of question that's been on almost every test all year this year, because it's that important. I want them to get it. And some of them get it every time, and some of them are still struggling. That's okay. As long as we finally get it at the end, that's what's important. And so that is then in place. I'm always there before and after school. They can always come and get help if they needed it. But we do let them just retake. We have our test set up by standard now. And so we do let them just retake the standard if we have different versions of that standard. So if they can't get that standard, we go over it, we do stuff, and then they can retake that one standard if they want off of that test. They don't have to redo the whole thing.
Okay, good, that sounds good. One more.
Yeah.
How about teachers? It says here on the very last page that we have 5 days of professional development workshops through the summer and 2 during the school year. Has that been happening?
Well, COVID has affected that. The first year we did it, we went for 5 days during the summer, and it was really good. And then she came out 2 days and watched what was going on and just gave us feedback, kind of helped us figure it out. Last summer, the new teachers did it online. It wasn't as good because virtual is not as good. She wanted to come out, she couldn't because they had restrictions where she was at, and so she was not able to come out this year. So, but we still get stuff saying they're doing these things. We haven't had any that are in person yet, because in person just made it so much better. And the feedback that I got, they felt like the in person would have been better. They weren't.
So we've got plans for this summer?
I haven't gotten anything yet that shows in person anything. Everything has been virtual that they've sent me that.
Have we got new teachers that need help on this?
Well, Mrs. Morton and Mrs. Burtonshaw, they've both been doing it this year from the virtual training that they got. They're the only ones that, and they seem to be handling it. I mean, I'm available. I help them. We talk about it a lot. I'm in no means an expert because I've only done it 1 year more than they did, but I did get the hands-on training instead of that. And so, I mean, I think they're doing a great job. Always more training is always better. But as soon as we can get an in-person one, I think that would be where we need to send them instead of the online's just not the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Take some time to come over and appreciate you.
Right, move on to graduation requirements.
All right, as Mr. Guimar is coming up, Madam Chair, if I could explain,
Yes.
we are on a time crunch with today's meeting a little bit before our training in Rigby. And so the little background with the graduation requirements is as things have moved since the time that I've been here. And I kind of was a precursor with the legislative things changing with COVID moving over. So we recognize that as some of our schedules changed last year, the courses that were offered and the credits that were available to students had some changes. We were wanting to make sure that the board is able to review all of these and we have a plan moving forward. So the plan for this is to review where we're at, possibly have another special meeting in a couple of weeks prior to May's board meeting, so that we will be able to be solid on this moving forward into next year and have the board vote on the requirements at the next board meeting. And so if Mr. Guimar could just give an overview of what he has to hand out, we could ask the questions and continue that way. Thank you, Mr. Guimar, for joining us. And some of the things that he has on here for this year have reflected the input that Mrs. Burtonshaw shared with both of us actually on that. So we're already going to present that to make sure that we have this as best as possible as we're moving forward. So Mr. Gima, I'll turn the time over to you. And
Okay, perfect. Glad to be here and talk about this. This is good. So that very first page on that West Jefferson graduation requirements, it just shows by year the proposed changes that we'd like to have on what the credit requirements are. And so as you go across, it'll just show by subject area, each of the core subjects and what the requirements are, how many credits are then necessary. And then you'll notice that at the top, there's of the columns, there's also like the 2021, 22, 23, and so on. And so what's important to see is that with that shift to all year math and all year English, there's been a change in the requirements there. And so depending on grade level, those credits have changed. And that's why the total number of credits also going from 5 periods to 6 periods has changed. And so then if you look on there's that first portion and then the next part where it says like class of 21 at the bottom of the first page. So then you can see exactly how it's broke out with how many English credits are required, how many math credits are required. And as Mrs. Bell mentioned, that is determined by a placement test that they take. And so that's why there it's kind of, it may be with other classes, there's more credits that they take depending on the class that they're in.
Can I just get a clarification so I don't get lost?
Yeah.
On English 9A and 9B for the class of 21, and you have 3 tries, do they just take it 2?
Yeah, so the class of 21, they didn't have it. So English 9A and 9B is what's always been required. So they just take it either first and third trimester, maybe it's first and second, or maybe it's second and third trimester. So they just have it the 2 out of the 3.
Okay.
And that'll be for all of the classes. That was the grade level that doesn't have a year-long English class.
So moving forward, it'll be A, B, and C.
So as of right now, it's just been A and B.
It'll still just.
Yeah.
For
So that would be
for freshmen only.
freshmen. Yep.
For freshmen, okay.
Yeah.
This year's freshman,
Yep.
not that.
Well, and next year's freshmen will still only have 2. So as of right now, freshman class will have 2 sessions, but then in sophomore, they'll have the 3.
Okay. Why don't they get 3
It's-
next year?
It's kind of flip-flop like with math. Math has 3 and then 2, and English has 2 and then 3.
Okay.
If that,
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And so then as you go down, it just shows the different for like physical or your science labs. That here we have physical science A and B, biology A and B. And then other than that, there's not really any other classes where you have multiple classes that way. So then if you look on the side, there's classes per year. And what that is it's just showing by year how it is that the credits change. And so for this year's seniors, their first 3 years of high school, they had 5 periods, whereas this year it changed to 6 periods. And so now that's why we have 53 out of the 63, or roughly 84% of your classes you have to pass in order to get those credits.
and so that addresses the question of, we have the state requirements of 46 credits. And that's typically, whether it's a semester or trimester, it doesn't really matter. But the reason why West Jefferson has more required is because we are offering 63 possible credits and they only need 46. A student really could just go in and flunk, 40% of their classes and still graduate. So traditionally they've had about 85% of the classes that we say you should pass 85% of the classes that we offer.
On the
Is
flip
that right, Mr. Guimar? Am I explaining that right?
But on the
Yep.
flip side, are you gonna have a lot of them that are ready to graduate before it's time to graduate?
And that possibly could happen.
A lot of them.
It could.
Do we want that?
I don't know. I saw in the news today that a 12-year-old was reading this morning, a 12-year-old graduated from high school and has an associate's degree, and he's happy as I'll get out.
Smart.
You know, some kids might, and some kids won't. And I guess we educationally, we have a lot of push in the state to have parent choice. Let parents do what they want. Let kids do what they want. I personally, at this point, if somebody wants to graduate early, I think we help them graduate early. Like,
Are we worried about money?
Well, even with
No.
early graduation,
it doesn't hurt
they
us.
still, we can put them down as an early graduate.
Does it allow them to take more virtual classes for college?
This can.
They could, yeah.
You know, if they get enough credits, they can advance themselves more.
Yeah, so like the student that we have that's early graduating this year, he's actually, since January, he's been enrolled at the College of Eastern Idaho. And so as he's early graduating, he was done in February, he's still enrolled in college level classes. So he had a good plan. In fact, just today I had a freshman that came and asked me how she could graduate early by a year. And so, yeah, so some considerations there as you look at what are those classes that you'd accept for that graduation. They do it the summer before, do those count towards their senior? They should, if they're doing the work there. And so I think that's part of that conversation and things to think about is how many credits can be transferred if they're virtually, if they're Idaho, if it's through the Idaho Digital Learning Alliance, if it's through other schools, and then how that translates over to West Jefferson requirements. So in each of those areas, then you have so world history. So I don't know how in detail you want to look at this. So you've got the requirements there for world history, U.S. history, your economics, U.S. government, input technology, computer technology, health, the fine arts, which are like your music, foreign language, band, ceramics, art, things like that, versus practical arts, which is like ag mechanics, your teen living, the cooking classes, shop classes, and then also computer classes will also work there as a practical art. And so there we have two. That's what's been done. And then as the credits became more, that's why I think we're here talking today is to decide do we keep those at 2? Do we put it up to 3? Now that now that there's more classes that they have, or the credits are going up now. And so I think that's part of the discussion to consider also. And so the next few pages, it really is just going through by class level from this year's seniors down to the freshmen. And then just keeping in mind that if it's this way, the freshman class, that would also apply to future classes as well. So like the 2025, 26, because unless there's changes, then that's what they would stay at also. Are there any questions up to?
Right now, this proposal here, that you've put in, this is what the board would look at and vote on in upcoming board meetings.
Right.
And so, and I would propose that we have a work meeting at another time to go more in depth on this. I knew that today was really just a preview to get this information out, to know that this discussion is happening, and then making sure that we do have the plan in place and getting the feedback from parents, from patrons, and others as we come into another work meeting with that.
Yeah. So then after that, it just goes into what are the
Just a quick
yeah.
question. Do you have for math, say for instance, do you have a path for the non-college?
if you turn to page 4, these are the different pathways that are available.
Okay.
And so down at the bottom, you'll see that I've got like a math placement. And I just kind of threw this out there as far as, do you turn it in the 6th grade, 7th grade, or 8th grade? Because what is happening is at the end of the 7th, well, I guess not what is happening, but what we're doing now is at the end of the 8th grade year, they're then placed in, are they gonna take algebra, or are they gonna go into geometry their senior year? Also, at the end of 7th grade, yeah, or their freshman year, thank you. At the end of their 7th grade, are they gonna go into algebra or geometry? So what the discussion there is if they are in 7th grade and they have that placement test, is it good that they're skipping 8th grade math to go into algebra? So if they take it their 6th grade year and they're proficient enough to be able to switch a grade or to skip a grade, should they do that their 7th grade year? And then they're introduced in 8th grade to the pre-algebra based off of that placement test? Or are they skipping too much information that 8th grade year to go straight into algebra? And then I guess that's where we need to look at, is algebra then really are the numbers or the passing rates well enough to show that they're skipping the 8th
But if
grade
they
year?
wanna go to college and they
Uh-huh.
don't do that path, they're gonna hurt.
Yeah, and so in each of these, if they've got their algebra, for example, if they are in 9th grade and they start algebra, so if you look at the second, pathway, it showed math 8A and B and C in their 8th grade year, then 9th grade year. So then they'd have algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and then that's where they could decide on if they're gonna be in the advanced math placement class, which would give more, that's the class that, they're on a computer and it's kind of a placement where they can go in and work on different skills based off of what the gaps are in their education.
Okay.
There's discrete math, and then here's where you also have the opportunity in pre-calculus. And so that does give college credit where they can go into that class also.
Okay.
And so even if they do start out as a 9th grader in algebra, they still are on a pathway that could lead into those preparatory college classes.
And is that as high as we go?
And so we go up to dual credit calculus.
Oh, we sure do, okay.
And so with the math, and I don't know if you can bring up that calculator that we have of the dual credits.
I'm not sure if I have that.
Is that one on there?
This is was that loaded on?
The dual credit calculator. So the other part of this is just the credits and how they relate with the dual credit classes. And so the state code on that, it says that a school district shall grant academic or career technical credit as applicable to the course to a pupil enrolled in a course for secondary credit if the pupil successfully completes the course. So 4 semester college credits equal at least 1 full year or 2 semester credits of high school credit in that subject. And so what that means is 4 college credits is then given 2 high school credits. So if we look at the colleges, well, let's go to the math. We'll go to the math. So we take our College of Western Idaho. They're the ones that do the pre-algebra or the pre-calculus classes.
Oh, I do. Share it back with me.
So their college algebra, the credits that they can receive for the first 2 trimesters here is 3 credits, which would then be 1.5 high school credits. But we actually, since you're in A and B, you get 2. And so we don't necessarily prorate that. But then if they're in trigonometry, that gives them 2, which is then a high school credit of 1. And so that would be, so A, B, and C, that ends up being 3 credits instead of the 2.5 that it says that they receive. So, but they are receiving 5 college credits. All right. So the other portion of that is looking at, and so in here, like we have the College of Southern Idaho that offers the EMT classes.
Yes.
So they receive 14 college credits, but what they should be receiving when it transcribes over to the high school is they should get a total of 7 college credits instead of 4.
7 high school credits.
Yeah, 7 high school credits instead of the 4 per class. that they're getting because of that ratio that they should be then getting or receiving. And so and I don't know, should I send that out to them or
Let's get that
should I
available
get that to
for
you? And then you
for
can
them.
go through and look at that and see by credit area. I don't know if you can see that. What it is with Idaho State University, with Northwest Nazarene, the credits that the students are receiving by college. And then it's also, if a student were to take every single dual credit, that would be 32 college credits and 16 high school credits that they could get from West Jeff, if they did every single one that we offer.
Is that too much of a workload for a student to do that?
I think that the teachers do really well in preparing and letting them know. And a lot of times, some of the students, they do look at that schedule and their planning to figure out, okay, this semester I've got this class that I'm going to be taking. And so looking at my schedule, I may need to shuffle things in order. And so we try to advise them in a way that would be, okay, you got all core classes maybe, and then you've got this elective that's actually a college class. So we should probably look at what you need to do in order. And if you're in sports or activities, is that going to be too much?
Yeah.
So
They
those
need
are
to
important
realize not to
considerations.
get over their head on some of this.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think just all of these other classes are just, I guess with your approval is what we offer to the students with science electives, computer electives, the fine arts, the practical arts, and then electives. Because the other part is we have like how many electives are necessary. And so it's important to understand that a student may take their practical arts and they get that. So let's say there's a student that does, and this is pretty common, they have their intro to ag their freshman year. They also want to do ag mechanics and they also want to do ag welding. So they're in all three of those classes. So now they've fulfilled the practical arts. So then the question that they always come back for is, well, what does that mean when I want to go into advanced ag welding or ag fabrication? That doesn't do me any good? That doesn't help out? All of them, regardless of what they're doing there, they just go, if they go past the required in each of those areas, then they're counted as electives. And so that's okay. So for any, like if we use math as an example, you have what's required there, but if you're a part of the kind of the path that would get you your dual credit, you're going to earn more credits in math, but those other ones are elective credits. And so you're meeting the math requirement, and that's okay, because now you're just going on and you're using that elective to improve in math or to continue in math. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Where does the EMT fall?
So EMT is under a practical art.
Do they have biology required?
Yeah, biology is a sophomore level
It's a
class.
sophomore.
Yeah. And so
So
I'm
if you were
sorry.
in the sciences. and- Yeah, never mind.
So your science electives, those are typically done your 11th and 12th grade year. There may be some like Mr. Bird's, he's got his botany and range science, botany, plants and soil science that they do as a sophomore or as a freshman or sophomore. And so those still would count, but typically your science electives are going to be done during your 11th and 12th grade year. Because you have like anatomy and physiology, chemistry, physical science, advanced biology, different classes like that they then do during their 11th and 12th. I think right now it's just looking at, there's a lot to,
Well, I never thought
Soak
we had
in.
that many electives. That's a huge amount of electives.
yeah.
So we'll share these out. We'll get them on our posted up. Schedule a work meeting here in a couple of weeks just to get us prepared. That will also allow us to go through that. So you have any other questions for Mr. Guimar while we have him today? No? Thank you, Mr. Guimar,
I'm so
for,
sorry. Can I bring up one last thing?
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That
No.
very
Yeah.
last page, I just wanted to bring up.
Was that the one with, what page is that?
It's 7.
Yeah.
So
Yep,
just,
okay.
just also another thing that I think you should be talked about or considered is the middle school credits.
Oh, good. Yeah. I'm
And
glad you brought
so
that
the
up.
middle school, we've got English 7, English 8, Math 7 and Math 8, life science and earth science, then your social studies. And then now there's the electives that they would take. And then I think some of the discussion then is, and this is based off of code, in the code book that was there was health that we started this year. There's career exploration, but another class that I think that we should consider is a computer class that's done in the middle school. There is input technology that's in the 9th grade. And just off of different conversations that I've had with teachers and the careers class that I teach, I just wonder if the kids are proficient enough with computers
Is there ever a
and
time
their
they learn
technology.
keyboard? Do they ever learn keyboard or is it always just with this?
They're learning it in elementary grades.
They
Yeah,
are
Yeah. And that's it.
learning how to place their hands on the homework.
This is where Connie,
she teaches
that
that.
was part of it, part of 5th grade.
And they-
Some keyboarding
It gets
section.
repeated throughout, but
So they learn it through repetition.
Yeah.
We learned our hands on the homework keys.
I'm
I still type
I was gonna-
typewriters.
typewriter.
So did I.
Nobody knows what a typewriter is.
I got a pen and I type it.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that one up because that will be something that we'll want, as we were talking about making sure we have clear expectation for our kids, even in the junior high. We want, like Idaho code calls it middle school credits, but we want to make sure that the kids are hitting that and that we have a decision as a board to say, all right, kids, are you completing this in the middle school or the junior high? Because
We also have music, don't we? And we have.
yeah, those count as electives there.
Yeah.
So,
Can't they go into high
Yep.
school and electricity?
absolutely. So we're moving in a great direction. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Guimar. Appreciate that. And we'll follow back up with you. Okay.
We don't have the list of 7th and 8th grade electives, though, do we?
I didn't see it.
No, we can get that up.
Alright.
Mr. Guimar, while you're still here, if you could help us get a list of 7th and 8th grade electives
Oh, yeah.
on that one. For the,
So, okay, I will get that.
If
I
we-
got it on a document that I have in Excel.
perfect. And we'll transport it over to this one.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, leadership premium.
Okay,
plan.
quickly on the leadership premium, again, this is just a discussion. This is one of those areas that was given, taken away, given, taken away. And so the leadership premium comes from Idaho code. This is the code that is on there. In a nutshell, what it says is, as a board, we should identify the leadership priorities that are in the school. And this other document that we have on here, these are all the different things that are in Idaho code. Really, the flexibility that we have is in H. What are the other things that we can put together in this plan as a priority? Now, the one thing about the leadership money that comes into the district, they give us $850 per FTE. But if we choose to give it, when we give it to a teacher, it has to be $900. If you do the math there's not enough to go around to everybody. That was written by design by them as a way to basically put a pay for performance type of element into schools. And this was done, about 10 years ago during the Luna times is when that came in. And so the decision on how that is done is not subject to collective bargaining. And so the teachers should not be involved in, well, who should get the money? These guys get the money. What the code says is that teachers shall be at least looked at it through a committee or looking for feedback from them on what are the priorities. So as we go into this and we're discussing this, I will present on the next board meeting that this is what our plan will be. It's going to be really similar to this. Some of the ideas that have come up right now are volunteering after hours, teaching a split level class, because that takes extra time for planning and preparation, grant writing, serving on a committee that meets outside of school hours. So if teachers are doing those types of things, then they could become eligible for a leadership premium. One thing that's happened in our district in the past is the plan that was set out, teachers could follow a specific pattern, but they would be disappointed if they didn't get the money. It was almost like we were kind of guaranteeing it to them, but this money shouldn't be guaranteed and really looked at year to year, which is sad. I hate to say that because we want to pass on as much as possible, but it says in law that this is not for collective bargaining. These are all the ways that it can be used, teaching a course where students can earn high school or college credit. And so that means that teacher could be eligible for that. But the amount of that really can vary from year to year and will fall back to administration to decide.
Is this a use it or lose it situation?
Yes, this would be a use it or lose it. So we do want to push this out to teachers as much as possible. And that's my philosophy, is get it out to the teachers. But the reason why our previous plan can't work is because it was set up where teachers would have to submit to a committee of teachers all the different things that they would be doing and log their hours. I don't think we need to log their hours. Administrators can work with teachers on our IPLP document that I have right here. That's what our teachers and administrators are working together with all their goals. I included this section in there this year because I thought if the leadership money comes back and we don't have any way to track it, we need to fall back to Idaho code and go to Idaho code and then get it out to the teachers the best that we can.
So the teachers themselves on that IPLP document can say,
Yes.
this is.
I volunteered
things
at
I've
these
been
things
involved in.
here.
Okay.
And so that doesn't guarantee they get it, but it's a way
Right.
to track it.
Right.
And then
And to
administrators,
make us aware.
we can look at that and say, this teacher is doing this. Let's get a leadership stipend for these teachers here. So it cuts down on the tracking requirements that the teachers had to do, because they really did. They'd have to track all the different times that they were out, submit it to the committee. The committee would look at it. The committee would then vote and decide who got the money, which I thought was not following the way the law was written. But I don't want to put my teachers in a decision where I have groups of teachers deciding if other teachers get the money.
Right. So who's on the committee now?
The committee would just be administration. And that's what follows the.
So when does that start this year?
It's going to have to start this year because we don't have anything else in place. So if we vote on this plan, if we don't have a plan in place, it falls back to Idaho code anyway.
Okay.
Like at the very least, it goes back to Idaho code. The plan I'm going to present is Idaho code with specific things like these things in A through D. So as I reach out to teachers, I'm going to ask them if they have any other ideas that they want to put down here for ways to do that. And that's the feedback that the teachers have. But at the end of the day, the teachers don't have the ability to come in and say, you can't give it to him, you can't give it. It's not their role to do that.
So with it being subjective like that, could we hypothetically say, these kids in this English class performed outstanding? Can we,
You could.
something like that?
And that's one of the things where, from the teacher's perspective, they're going, well, why should the administrators have that type of power? Why should they have that kind of ability to give them money where they want to? The law was written, unfortunately, philosophically, I don't follow that, but the law was written for a pay for performance type of approach.
Mhm.
And so my philosophy is to get it to as many teachers as possible, but hypothetically, yes, it could be used. Maybe there's a year where we are trying to get a hard to fill teacher to come in. This could be used as a bonus for that year to bring a hard to fill teacher in. And that's going to change from year to year. Because we always don't know what it is. But with our past plan, administration did not have the flexibility to do that. So right now we're just in the process to let this sink in and let's talk about it again. These are the other things that could come up in the next work meeting, And then we'll be ready for the next board meeting on that.
So there's not enough to pay a certain percentage. How much, and some of them don't even want to try, so.
Right.
Probably works out.
Not everybody will qualify for this.
Mhm.
And that's the
And
part,
even if everybody qualified, we couldn't.
we couldn't,
Couldn't fund everything.
legally you couldn't do it.
So you'll be in a better position to keep track of that.
We'll be able to track it and see, because when we pay this money out, I send a report to the legislature and to the State Department saying, these are the teachers we paid. This was the reason why we paid them based off of Idaho code. And so really the process that we're going into, since our previous plan really can't be used this year, we're just looking for a way to make sure that we're reaching out to say, if that plan isn't working, the plan that we follow is going to be this document.
Do we have money this year? Did they give us?
I
money?
think I'm 99% sure that it's gonna come.
Okay, we're in that situation.
We're still in it.
Okay.
We're still in it. They're saying that they're gonna send it. So this also might be a moot point
Yeah.
at the end of the day. But they're saying they're gonna send it, but I've also heard a superintendent who's retiring, wise superintendents that are retiring this side, and they say, until I see it in our district budget, I'm not gonna do it.
Not gonna
So-
worry.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Following this, we will be going over to Rigby for the spring leadership training. We'll have a quorum, so.
Okay.
It's been posted, so the floor will be open for a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?